In this gold belt video, I will be showing how to test a C# shareable package. In the C# world, that's a class library. I'm going to use the test existing functionality exercise. We'll use this code base to basically create the test. The trick to a class library is figuring out the entry point. Unlike a main or a console application or rich application client where we have a main method, or unlike a web service or web application where we have web endpoints that we can call, figuring out how to test a class library can be tricky, especially if there aren't existing tests. Let's start off. I'm going to just create a test project first because I know I'm going to need one of those. So we'll do this. I'll do this one in NUnit. So there's C#. These will be our acceptance tests project. And create. All right, so let's go ahead and rename this. So we're testing the ability to process subscriptions. So let's just call it process subscriptions tests. All right, now we know we're going to need a reference to the class library itself, which is subscription billing. So let's add that really fast. We'll add a project reference. We've got that going. I do want to change my namespace here. I don't like that namespace. Let's pull in what we've got from the class library and we'll modify from there. Physician searching subscription billing looks good. I'll change the name, the assembly name to include the acceptance tests. That looks good. Go ahead and disable nullable. All right, that looks excellent. And then finally, it's going to ask me, do I want to change my namespace to match the folding structure? I do. That's going to make life a lot simpler. All right, so we've got our main test here. We'll say process subscriptions successful. All right, so this is an assert pass. We need to figure out how to test this class library. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things we can do. We can certainly start navigating into the code, into the source files and see from there. One of the things I like to do is just explore really quickly inside IntelliSense. A lot of times it'll be obvious what we want to test. So let's see if we can figure that out. So we know the root namespace is going to be Lucent Terry, physician searching, subscription billing. I'm doing the full class or the full namespace because it's going to limit the amount of types that come back. If I just started typing, I'm going to have a whole bunch of things, but by putting the full namespace of the root namespace in, I'm only going to get the types that are available in that particular package, in that particular library. So this is going to help out. Looking at this, we've got our class here, so obviously I'm not testing that. We've got a remittance customer, interesting, but we've got a watchdog processor. Now that seems promising since we're processing subscriptions. So we've got this watchdog processor. The first thing I would want to do here is say, could I just create a new one of these? So we'll say new, open paren, and we'll notice nothing pops up with IntelliSense. It's not giving me information about the constructor. That means there likely either isn't a constructor or they're hidden by being private or protected or maybe even internal. So that's not going to work. So if I can't just create a new one, if I can't just new it up, maybe there's a static method. So let's try that. Sure enough, there's a process subscriptions method, and one of the overloads takes no arguments. So that seems promising. The additional overloads, I can pass the billing through date and the billing start date, so the end time and then the start time for those. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Looking at this, this is going to give me back a watchdog processor by the end of it. So let me work through that. So we'll say watchdog processor equals process subscriptions. There is my call in. And now I can start asserting on whatever happened. There's the successful ones. There's the errors. So now I can do what I need to do on the basically on the assertions there. So I can say, hey, make sure there's none here. Make sure there's one here. So that's one way I can do that is purely through IntelliSense. Looking at a different way that I can go about this, I could have figured this out by looking at the code. So let's look at, again, the root is usually a good place to start. Rather than going into the data namespace or the credit cards namespace, I don't know that there's going to be anything there that's going to be what I want, but looking in the root of the project, these files tend to be the main functionality. So I want to start with that. And again, we'll look at the remittance customer. So the remittance customer is just a sealed record, so it's just a dumb data object. It has one static method that takes an iData record to return a remittance customer. That doesn't seem promising. That doesn't look like something that's going to make sense. So let's look at the watchdog processor. I'm going to collapse the definitions here. And we'll start off constructors. Sure enough, there's a private constructor. That's not going to help me out. There are some properties we can use, nothing static. But again, looking at these static, public static, since I know I can't call a constructor, I'm going to look for static methods. So sure enough, there are 3 static methods here, public static. These are all overloads of process subscriptions. That again tells me what I'm looking for. So the entry points into a class are going to be a constructor. So if I can new that thing up, in this case, I can't do that here. If I can't do that, I'm looking for a static method. If neither of those are available, then this isn't the class that's going to give me the entry point. I'm looking for something else. So again, you're just looking through the code, looking through the classes to find something that you can either new up that takes very little information or has some static method that lets you create one of those. That gets us started. There's our basic test. We're now ready to implement the rest of the functionality, including figuring out what do we do with the database, figuring out how do we mock things out, web service calls, anything else we need to know.